there. I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds, and leaky black Matt Norlander is here with me, and we're going to be here on CBS Sports Network for the next hour discussing that idiotic trade the Mavericks did that sent Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. We're not going to do that. I mean, we could do that. It would be easy to do. We could do 7 hours on that because it certainly was bananas. But we're going to instead focus on college basketball, where a neat thing is unfolding. I don't know if you've noticed, but Auburn and Duke aren't just number one and number two. They've actually separated from the rest of the sport in the betting markets as it pertains to odds to win the 2025 NCAA tournament. Right now, Auburn plus 380, Duke plus 390. Nobody else in the country is better than plus 1,000. They are also number one and number two in the net and number one and number two at KenPom.com. And they are being led, and this is the neat part, by the two men who have emerged as the obvious candidates for National Player of the Year. At Auburn, it's Broome. At Duke, it's Cooper Flagg. So, Norlander, let me ask you this. Do you have a sense for how unusual it is this early in February for two teams to separate from the pack and be led by the two players that have also more or less separated from the pack in the Wooden Award race?
So for everyone watching, thank you for joining us right here on CBS Sports Network Live. And for anyone listening to this after the fact on your phones or watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. Here's what I love. Parrish does not realize this, but he picked the opening topic. This leads tomorrow's court report. I had decided this days ago. Do I have a sense? Well, you bet I have a sense. But what we have right now, as it's still developing, we're not guaranteed to get it by the time we get to mid-March, but we're certainly pacing toward it, is something unlike anything we've had since 2000, this century at least, but really over the past 50 years, we are getting something fairly unprecedented. Here are some quick numbers before we get into the Flagg-Broome comparisons. I got some stats on that as well. The most recent battle for National Player of the Year that was a two-person race that was really compelling, where you had split votes, was Denzel Valentine and Buddy Hield. That season, Michigan State and Oklahoma were both 2 seeds. They weren't the 2 best teams in the country. Neither of them got to the top line there. Oklahoma made the Final Four. Michigan State was upset in the first round of the NCAA tournament by Middle Tennessee. Oh, by the way, after the fact, just one of many things we can look at for National Player of the Year, the KenPom algorithm. Buddy Hield was number 3 that year. Denzel Valentine was number 4. This season right now, Broome and Flagg are by far 1 and 2. There's no one even close to them in the race overall. Prior to that, J.J. Redick and Adam Morrison, a very famous one. Duke was a 1 seed that year. Gonzaga was a 3. They both won their leagues. They were both knocked out in the Sweet 16, but those are not the 2 best teams in the country that season. Prior to that, 03-04, Jameer Nelson won most of the Player of the Year awards, but Emeka Okafor did win one of them. St. Joe's is the 1 seed. UConn was a 2. UConn did not even win its league that season. And then the season before that, 02-03, you might be thinking, yeah, Hughes, Carmelo. Guess what? Carmelo was a second-team All-American that season. That was a 3-way race. There were 3 players that earned at least one National Player of the Year recognition honor. TJ Ford, a 1 seed on Texas. Nick Collison, Kansas was a 2 seed and won the Big 12, while Texas was a better seed at number 1. And then David West was on an awesome Xavier team. He was a menace. That Xavier team was a 3 seed that won the A-10. 3 players won National Player of the Year. Those have been the best Player of the Year races this century, but none of them compared to what we have right now. We have never had in recent history over the past 3+ decades a situation where the 2 best teams in the country also have by far the 2 best players in the country, and those 2 players are essentially neck and neck at this point in the season. I think it's an amazing and awesome thing for college basketball.
And I also love just how different they are as players and just their entire makeup. One of them has been labeled a future star since he was 15, 16 years old. The other one started his career at Morehead State. One of them is projected to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. The other one has some question marks about exactly what he'll be in that league, although I think you'd be crazy to bet against him playing in that league. He'll be a role player, a rotation piece for a good franchise, I would assume, as a professional. And then the difference in age. Cooper Flagg, as you know, just turned 18 4 days before Christmas. Broome is 22 years old and quite literally 53 months older than Cooper Flagg. So I just love the way these 2 teams have emerged, the way these 2 players have emerged. And once we get the Super Bowl behind us and people start zeroing in on college basketball a little bit more, this is going to be the biggest story in the sport. And it's why we led with it today. Eventually, the Cooper Flagg-Broome debate that already exists in our little circles, it'll become the type of thing that's being talked about on sports shows all across the country, not just sports shows connected to college basketball.
No doubt about it. I love that you tapped into. To me, they represent the differences in college hoops as well. You've got a blue blood program in Duke that's had, amazing freshmen, number one picks, national players of the year. And then you've got an Auburn program that has been completely transformed by Bruce Pearl that had minimal amounts of history. All due respect to Chris Porter, that team matches this one in terms of best starts ever in Auburn history. But these are two very different programs. These are two very different players. They project differently at the NBA level. Janai Broome could barely get a college scholarship offer coming out of the state of Florida as a high school prospect, and then through the portal, he turns into one of the best players in the country, and he's a transfer. He's a senior. He's a fifth-year guy. You can see what he's doing, how he's dominating. Cooper Flagg is the immediate, highly hyped, delivers right away. I just love every single angle and comparison and juxtaposition about the two players, about the two teams, the two programs, the two coaches. John Shire, he's in his third season on the job. Bruce Pearl is building out a Hall of Fame resume and doing things now that continue to one-up what he's been able to do at Auburn overall. I think it's fascinating. We've had some awesome National Players of the Year races over the seasons and over the years, but there hasn't been one quite like this. And I hope, but I also believe, Parrish, that this is going to continue to be a thing. It started about 3 weeks ago when Flagg has been good all season, but we really waited for Duke to make that big pronouncement. The game against Pitt early in January, he had the big dunk, had a big breakout game, and suddenly it got really close. Broome had the ankle injury, which allowed Flagg to make up some ground. And since then, it's been one thing after the other. Now Duke hosts Syracuse on Wednesday. Should be a walkover. We'll see what Flagg's numbers there are. Auburn tonight hosts Oklahoma, with Broome having an opportunity to put up his next game. We have reached the point, in my opinion, that it is a game-by-game, what did this guy do, what did that guy do kind of race, and that's wonderful for college hoops. Real quick, GP, I want your take on who you'd vote for right now. I'm going to give you a couple of quick stats, and you tell me who you would take right now, not who you think will win it and what you think you're going to vote on when we do this, in the midst of the NCAA tournament. But today, if we had to end it. Right now, Flagg best Broome, 20 points per game to 18.3. Broome best Flagg, rebounds, 11.2 for Broome, 8 per game on the boards for Flagg. In assists, Flagg's got them, but they're both respectable. 4.2 dimes for Flagg, 3.1 for Broome. In blocks, it's Broome easy, 2.7 to 1.2. And in steals, Flagg doubles up Broome, 1.5 to 0.7 overall. Those are traditional stats, but I do want to let you know that in terms of offensive rating, box plus minus, player efficiency rating, Broome has a lead on Flagg in all of those kind of more advanced predictive metric stuff. And if you do per 40 minutes, Broome also best Flagg, because remember, there have been 2 instances this season where Broome has gotten hurt in game, and so his per game averages have actually suffered as a result. So if you go to per 40 minutes, Broome is beating out Flagg. Broome's on the number 1 team in the country that's held that position for a number of weeks here. We know what Flagg's been able to do. If you had to vote today, would you go Flagg or would you go Broome?
I would submit a ballot that had Cooper Flagg at number 1, but I don't feel strongly about it, and don't even feel as strongly about it as I felt, say, 2 weeks ago. Like, I was on the record not too long ago saying I thought Cooper Flagg was going to run away with the Player of the Year race. I don't believe that's true anymore. This is going to be debatable, probably to the end, and I don't know that it'll be clear-cut. I would vote for Cooper Flagg. I would make him the youngest National Player of the Year in the history of men's college basketball, but there's a compelling case to be made for Janai Broome, and you don't even have to get that creative. You can just lay out a lot of the numbers you just laid out and point to the number 1 sitting next to Auburn's name, and there's your case. It's a fascinating race, very, very close. Right now, my ballot would be for Cooper Flagg.
I would go Broome narrowly. This also is a rare case where these players have faced each other in the regular season. Yet another dynamic with this. When the two teams met back in December, on December 4th, Duke won in Cameron 84-78. In that game, Broome had 20 points, 12 boards, 3 assists. He did foul out. Flagg in that game, 22 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Flagg outplayed Broome head-to-head in that particular game. I would give the edge to Broome because I think he narrowly, and I mean narrowly, has a statistical edge on Flagg right now, and he is doing it unquestionably in a league that is exceedingly more difficult than the ACC. Right now, I would give it to Broome. What I do hope happens is that these two continue to be incredible, The teams continue to be awesome. They continue to dominate the storyline. We talk about it practically on a weekly basis on the pod. And then for historical purposes, it will be reflected in the National Player of the Year voting the way that it is with those other races I just told you about to top off the show. So when we look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we see, man, they split it 3-3, or one guy had 4 and one guy had 2. I think that could be the way that we are heading. A reminder to our viewers on CBS Sports Network. For CBS Sports, we've long held the belief that we hold off on our National Player of the Year voting until after the Elite Eight, but before the Final Four. So we let some NCAA tournament performance have a factor, but not have it be the overriding factor. It seems kind of silly to log your Player of the Year vote on, say, March 17th when you've got significant, meaningful games that could ever so slightly sway the vote one way or the other. And it feels like with these two guys, it really may come down to that.
Last thing on this, you mentioned the difference in leagues. The SEC is clearly the best league in the country and arguably the best league of all time in its current form. The ACC ranks 5th right now among conferences, according to the net. People who argue in favor of Broome, which is often Auburn fans on social media, will point this out, and they'll say, what he's doing in the SEC should be more appreciated than what Cooper Flagg is doing in the ACC. Obviously, we've had National Players of the Year come from the West Coast Conference, come from the Atlantic 10, come from all sorts of leagues, even leagues inferior to the current form of the ACC. But in your mind, how much does that matter? How much should it be a factor that Broome is doing this against the SEC and Cooper Flagg is doing it against an inferior conference?
I think it can and should be a factor when you're taking into the level of competition the players are going against. And I would put it more as a notch in Broome's column than a detracting factor in Flagg's. I think there's a specific difference between those two. And as the SEC continues to be on a path toward 11, maybe 12 teams in the NCAA tournament, and the ACC right now is struggling to get 4 of its 18, okay? I think that should be a factor. But it's not like Flagg can't overcome it. I'll also mention something that I wrote about recently for CBSSports.com. Flagg right now leads his team in every major statistical category. There's only been one other freshman in the country that's ever done that, and that was Ben Simmons, who, by the way, did not win National Player of the Year. But then again, Ben Simmons' team on LSU was nowhere near good enough to be an NCAA tournament team, whereas Flagg is guiding the ship on a Duke team that is exceeding the hype overall. So it's a compelling argument. This is going, and I hope it gets louder. I hope people want to talk about it a lot because it's a really good thing for college hoops. The ACC versus SEC factor, I think, will play a role. But I only think that should play a role if really we're looking at these two guys and they continue to be so close, in their statistical profiles across the board, that if ultimately that's what you need to do to split the vote, I think that would be a reasonable thing because Broome, who has played through injury and maintained really healthy averages despite missing the majority of 2 games, which in effect bring his per game averages down, it makes it all the more impressive what he's doing. If he did not get hurt in those games, obviously his numbers would be even better than what we see right now.
When we come back, there was only one ranked versus ranked matchup on Monday night. It was Kansas and Iowa State. The Jayhawks won by 17. We'll discuss the developments inside Allen Fieldhouse. We'll do that next. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. There was one ranked versus ranked matchup on Monday night in the sport. Number 16, Kansas 69. Number 8, Iowa State 52. That was the score inside Allen Fieldhouse. Norlander, before we talk about the winners, let's discuss the losers because Iowa State has gone from 15-1 overall, 5-0 in the Big 12, to 17-5 overall, 7-4 in the Big 12. They've now lost 3 straight. What is wrong with TJ Otzelberger's team?
A few things, although the loss itself at Kansas isn't a surprise. Parrish, I talked about it on CBS Sports HQ heading into Monday night's game. We talked about it on the podcast as well. I did expect Kansas to get its act together for this game at least and win, and when it did, but it went easily. Curtis Jones was on a rocket there for about 7-8 games for Iowa State. He had 7 last night. He had 14 in the shocking loss over the weekend to Kansas State. And prior to that, in the loss to Arizona, he had only had 8 points. I mean, he's 3 for like 22 in his last 22 attempts from beyond the arc. So he's hit a cold streak. That's an obvious thing that is glaring with Iowa State at the moment. Him and Keyshawn Gilbert need to get back into having that rhythm that they had previously. Also, there could be a little bit here of Milan Momcilovic. He's the key stretch big. He's like a 6'8" stretchable small forward who can shoot well from deep. He's supposed to be coming back soon from injury, but he hasn't been involved. I think there could be some attrition issues there, and it all kind of piling up. That combined with, we can put it into a little bit of context here. This should probably be a 2-game, skid for Iowa State, but Caleb Love hit a 55-foot prayer as time expired at home, and that game went to overtime, and Arizona took advantage of its home court environment 8 days ago and was able to turn that into a win. So those are some initial, diagnoses on what's happening with Iowa State. I will say, I said this late night in the recap for CBS Sports HQ on Monday night. I do think that this loss now, compiling with everything else, I do think it will cost Iowa State a number 1 seed. And obviously the Cyclones were a projected number 1 recently. They were tracking toward that. But as we refresh the metrics here on Tuesday, February 4th, ISU right now, from a resume standpoint, is 11th in wins above bubble. It's 10th in strength of record. It's 9th in the net. It's 18th in KPI, which is a resume-based only metric. It has nothing to do with predictives, how many points you scored, how efficient you have. It is purely win-loss against your schedule. 18th right now for Iowa State. So I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll get out of this. I think they're going to make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament as a 2 or a 3 seed. But I do think the nature of this loss and what they've gone through over the past 2.5, 3 weeks, Parrish, is going to cost them a 1 seed.
Momcilovic's injury is the obvious thing that is contributing to this. He's missed 7 games now, and they're 3-4 in those games. Now, when you go from as good as they were to as bad as they've been, it can't possibly be one player, or it's not normally one player. It's usually a collection of things, and you laid out a lot of it. This has gotten really bad, particularly on offense. If you just run the data at barttorvik.com, in this 3-game losing streak, Iowa State ranks in that stretch 246 nationally in offensive efficiency, and only 76 nationally in defensive efficiency, down to 128th in the country. On the season, obviously much better than that. So they went into the record books as well. You mentioned the Arizona loss was in overtime, and so by definition it was tied after 40 minutes, but it became a double-digit loss for the Cyclones, given the way those 5 minutes went. Caleb Love banged home a couple of threes. And so after last night's loss to Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse, Iowa State became the first college basketball team on the men's side since 1975 to lose 3 straight games by double digits while being ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll. So this is it's a stretch. It's a stretch that we don't see top 10 teams go through very often. Like quite literally since 1975. That was the last time it had been done. I'm still confident that this team will be fine when it's healthy, but they're going through it right now. Let's focus on the winners. I thought Bill Self had an interesting post-game interview with Scott Van Pelt after the game and said, hey, listen, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Bill more or less said, there's some teams that have established themselves as really good teams in this country. I imagine he's thinking Auburn, Duke, those types of teams. He said, we're not one of those teams right now, but I think we can get there. If we get healthy and it clicks, I think we can get there. Do you think they can get there? Can Kansas still join Auburn and Duke at the tip top of this conversation? Remember, the Jayhawks were our preseason number 1 team.
I do not. I wrote a story over the weekend about Kansas and its slump right now, and I thought Kansas would respond and win Monday night, but I don't think that Kansas is going to get back to the point. And Bill Self in that program obviously should believe that that's going to be the case, but I don't think that Kansas, which does rank top 10 at KenPom right now, it's still healthily on the fringe of that conversation. There's an upper tier in college hoops, and I don't think that Kansas is going to get back to that point personally. 3 of its next 4 are on the road, notably. So, and the schedule from an opponent perspective, venue aside, very manageable. Like Kansas should get into its groove here, but do you get tripped up once or twice on the road? Keep that in mind. I thought the defense on Monday was so critical. Iowa State scored 52 in 40 minutes. 48 hours prior, Baylor scored 60 in 20 minutes, albeit on its home floor, but still 60 points. So they were able to change some stuff. Self actually had a funny comment going into halftime. They got him for one question on the court. He goes, well, Saturday was a long time ago. Obviously it wasn't, but it certainly looked that way on Kansas's end overall. Hunter Dickinson, again, winds up being the key player here. He's been their most consistent player, but it can't just be him. Zeke Mayo stepped up and played well. You had good play out of DeJuan Harris, but still, there was an insane sequence in which they got a lob to KJ Adams that practically brought the house down. It was an awesome sequence for Kansas, and then and there you knew for good Iowa State had no chance on that game on that night. But you still aren't getting enough collective performance out of AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin. Griffin started, he had 5 points. Storr had 8 off the bench last night. Didn't even attempt. No, he was 2 of 5 from 3-point range overall. Flory Badunga, I know Kansas fans were openly cheering for him to play during the game last night. It has reached that point where thousands of KU faithful, this is a very smart, invested, intelligent fan base. They are sending a very clear message to Bill Self about what he should be doing with his rotations. Now, Bill Self knows more about basketball than most people that are in those stands, if not every single person. But nonetheless, it is a developing storyline there. And at 16-6 overall, staring down a game against Kansas State on the road, and that takes even higher stakes than normal considering what KU did against Iowa State just last weekend. I'll be interested to see if KU can really string something together here, because it has not won 3 games in a row in almost a month, and it hasn't won 4 games in a row since November.
I heard the chants last night. On one hand, I understand them. I mean, this is a heralded freshman who's a super athlete and could theoretically bring some stuff to your basketball team that it doesn't currently have. On the other hand, it's Bill Self. It seems silly to think that I understand Kansas's personnel better than the Hall of Fame coach who recruited them and is with them every day in a gym. And so I know some people have either criticized or at least highlighted over the years that Bill is a little more hesitant than, say, your Mike Krzyzewski once upon a time or John Calipari once upon a time, to just throw the freshmen out there and let them play through mistakes. And some people would hold that up and say that's something he should fix. But then I think if you were trying to argue the other side of it, you'd say, well, maybe that's why Bill Self has won multiple national championships and a million Big 12 titles. And John Calipari got ran out of Kentucky. Maybe the critique you have of Bill Self's lack of enthusiasm for playing first-year players unless they're Andrew Wiggins or Joel Embiid, maybe that shouldn't be a criticism as much as a credit. And among the reasons he's, put together one of the best coaching careers in the history of the sport. I don't know which is true, but I do think it's a fascinating situation. And it is undeniable that we have got to the point where Kansas fans, in a season where the Jayhawks were ranked number 1 and really haven't looked like that too often this season, we have reached the point where KU fans are sort of questioning their Hall of Fame coach. And I guess time will tell. We'll figure out who's right.
Yeah, it'll be here's the schedule real quick. At K-State, home to Colorado, should be an auto win. At Utah, at BYU, that gets a little bit tricky. Then home to Oklahoma State, then at Colorado. The stretch on the back end is really, really difficult. And so KU could be fighting for some intriguing seeding heading into the Big 12 tournament. But you look at the opponents, next 6 games, if Kansas is going to be a top 10 team in the country, it's 5-1 minimum over the next 6 that it needs to get it done. Anything short of that, then I think some of these existential questions will only continue to linger there for a Kansas team that is trying to avoid finishing outside the top 3 in its conference in 2 straight years for the first time since 1982-83.
When we come back, more coaching news in the sport this week. Leonard Hamilton has announced his resignation from Florida State effective at the end of the season. Another big-name ACC coach on his way out the door. We'll dive into that next. This is the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. Some coaching news this week. Leonard Hamilton, at the age of 76, has announced his resignation from Florida State, effective at the end of the season. So it's another big-name ACC coach out the door. Norlander, in recent years, the conference has lost Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Tony Bennett, Jim Boeheim, Jim Larrañaga. That's 5 Final Four coaches, 10 national titles between them, and now Leonard Hamilton going to join them in what I assume will be retirement. In a related note, the ACC is ranked 5th among conferences, according to the net. Are those two things connected? When people ask what's wrong with the ACC and why is it down, is the answer simply they've lost some of the best coaches in the sport in recent years and have had a little bit of a difficult time recovering?
It's not everything, but that's a major factor. I mean, the coaches you just mentioned, you toss in the likes of Mike Bray, you kind of go on down the list. I mean, we're talking about 4,000 plus wins in Hamilton, like a lot of really experienced men with a lot of success, obviously national championships, Final Fours on top of that. Leonard Hamilton's the winningest coach in the history of FSU, when we can kind of get to his legacy and the situation at FSU before we get out of this segment. But to your broader question, yeah, I wrote last month for the court report about how the ACC is going through a severe identity crisis because of this, because you've had so many significant figures leave the sport and leave the conference, and some of them under unusual circumstances. Jim Larrañaga pulled the ripcord. Effectively, he told us after the fact, it was like, 2 days before Christmas, he said, I'm out. Tony Bennett retires out of nowhere, a stunner, in October. Krzyzewski had the farewell tour. Even Roy Williams, when he retired, that happened on April Fool's Day. And basically every news gatherer in the sport had to check in with sources and say, this isn't an April Fool's thing, right? This is actually happening. He's really retiring right now when we're getting ready to play the national championship game. That was indeed the case. So it's been a compound effect overall. The ACC is in the midst of maybe its worst season ever. I mean, it's got 18 schools, and you look at like Pitt losing at home to a bad Virginia team on Monday night and just throwing its resume practically in the trash. And you look at the ACC right now, and like I think it's going to get 4 teams into the tournament. North Carolina's out of the bracket right now. Pitt's out of the bracket. Are we going to have something happen with SMU? Can it make a run? I mean, it's Louisville just took a loss, but Louisville should be in Clemson. And then you've got Duke, which is like 5 tiers above everyone else. Although Duke plays at Clemson this week. Keep an eye on that. But yeah, you lose that many really good coaches. It opens up a window for some guys to come into the league and really make some moves, Shire aside. But the so-called brain drain has been significant. And as I wrote in January, I don't know how long it takes for the ACC to get back to where it was. It's a huge league. It's geographically, literally all over the map right now. And the days of that conference owning, in a given season, 7 of the 25 best and most important programs, I don't want to say they'll be gone for good, because who knows? Maybe we look up in a decade and they have a really hot season. It's an amazing thing. But it seems that is an era that is now behind us, and that conference has to get some real veteran leadership and experience and some coaches that can make some moves, because right now it is adrift.
You got to make the right hires when you lose people of this magnitude. At Louisville, it looked like they didn't with Kenny Payne, but now it looks like they did with Pat Kelsey. At North Carolina, sort of up in the air right now. Hubert Davis has had some good seasons, but also some not so good seasons, and we're experiencing one of those right now. At Syracuse, replacing Jim Boeheim, let's give it time, but I don't think anybody would argue it's gotten off to the best start under Red Autry. At Virginia, we're just in an interim situation, but they need to get this right in replacing Tony Bennett. At Miami, they're going to need to get it right in replacing Jim Larrañaga. And at Florida State, you've got to get it right in replacing Leonard Hamilton. And the issue, and I'd be curious to know if sources you're talking to are saying the same things to me that they're saying to you, whether it's agents or other people in the industry. You got a lot of these power conference jobs that are going to be open. And it used to be not too long ago when you had a Shaka Smart at the mid-major level just waiting to take a job, or an Archie Miller at the mid-major level just waiting to take a job. And I guess Archie's career has taken him back there, but you get the point. Who are those guys right now? The hiring and firing cycle has been so sped up that you get these big ACC jobs that need coaches, and it is not obvious where they go to find their next replacements.
I agree. So, it's okay. A few things with this. One, it was acknowledged for weeks that Leonard Hamilton was going to end this season. His contract expires at the end of the season. He's also being sued by 6 of his former players because they allege that NIL payments that were promised by Hamilton didn't get paid. So it's not that FSU is being sued. Hamilton himself is in the process of being sued. You add that onto the fact that FSU has obviously been down. He's got a proud career and he's done some amazing things there and really is a trailblazer in many respects. But the end of his career is not going the way that he or really anyone would have wanted or expected. So with all of that, who is going to be the guy that steps in there? There are 2 guys. I'm not saying either of these guys are going to get the job because, frankly, Florida State is going to have to go through a process that's going to be pretty thorough, and I think will evolve over the next 6 weeks. But 2 names of guys who have coached at the high major level that I could see having success there if indeed they are courted and they wanted the job is one is Will Wade, who I am convinced is going to get hired to a bigger job. He's at McNeese right now. He got fired from LSU for stuff that, frankly, in this current environment, he would have never lost his job. So I think Will Wade to Florida State is a name that could make some sense. And frankly, if I'm Florida State and I want someone that has proven to be a winning coach, why would I not chase after him? And then another one, although I don't necessarily see this as exceedingly likely, his name has been tossed out to me, with Chris Mack after just 1 year at Charleston, and he's done good. We'll see if they get to the tournament. He might want to just stick around there for a little bit. Would he be willing to maybe go and check out FSU? There's also Dennis Gates, who was a longtime assistant under Leonard Hamilton. He's in the midst of a great year 3. I will have more on him in the court report on Wednesday as well. He's got a very big buyout. Don't know if that's feasible. Frankly, don't know if he would want to leave the rigors of the SEC to go to an easier ACC. You can make cases either way. The financials might matter on that end as well. So who it is, I don't know. I can tell you this right now, FSU is 3rd in the pecking order of those ACC jobs. I think all things considered, some would disagree. I had a conversation with a source in the past 24 hours. Virginia versus Miami, what's the better job? To me, it's Virginia, but people can make a strong case for Miami. So whatever, 1A, 1B, however you want to order them. FSU is clearly 3rd in the ACC pecking order right now. So the jockeying for potential candidates will be very interesting behind the scenes as we move toward. And make no mistake, calls have already been made, and agents are trying to do their best to set their guys up as best they can. So when that decision needs to get made in March, their guy is in position to get the job.
I would rank them the same way. I think Virginia, then Miami, then Florida State, with the slight edge, Virginia over Miami. Last thing on Leonard, 76 years old, amazing career, incredible life story. Like, just get you 20 minutes one day and just read about the life that Leonard Hamilton has lived. It's amazing. But it has sort of gotten to a bad place, and it stinks that it ends like this with, controversial headlines connected to NIL and his program, and then more losses than most of his career he's been used to dealing with. But if you are always going to coach until you get told not to, well, then this is the way your career is going to end, always. Like, Mike Krzyzewski walked away. Roy Williams walked away. Leonard is 76 years old and still coaching basketball. You're never going to be able to, unless you're Mark Few or Tom Izzo, I guess, Bill Self, just string nonstop one great season after another, particularly at a place like Florida State. And I guess if you'd have just told me Leonard Hamilton's going to keep coaching until they tell him he can't do it anymore, then I would have told you it's going to have a not so great ending to a really incredible career. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, Hamilton and the retirement rumors, and frankly, unless he wants to go, which would make him 77 beyond, if he wants to be an assistant, by all means, more power to him. But the retirement stuff with Hamilton has been out there for 3 or 4 years. There's a real, it's not even bittersweet. It's just bitter of the fact that he had an FSU team. We talk about the 2020 tournament that was canceled. That was the year that Dayton was really good with Obi Toppin. Kansas was awesome. Baylor was awesome. Gonzaga was awesome. San Diego State was awesome. FSU was really good as well. I had to post the picture again myself on social media on Monday because FSU hung a banner where they had the number 4 AP ranking, and it's got that Seminole logo, and it just says NCAA tournament canceled. And they hung in I love the fact they did it. Whatever. It gets used as a meme here and there. who's to say that they couldn't make the Final Four in 2020
Yeah.
and he would have had that much more of a really great legacy? But his legacy is strong all the same. Coached at Oklahoma State, was a key assistant at Kentucky, was the head coach at Miami, had a quick cup of coffee in the NBA with the Wizards, and has run Florida State's program since 2002. If you are unaware, Joe B. Hall hired Leonard Hamilton to be an assistant at Kentucky after Hamilton was at Austin Peay, recruited Fly Williams, Fly's open, let's go P, the whole thing. Leonard Hamilton made that recruitment happen. But when Hamilton was hired, I believe he was the first black assistant in the SEC. He's carried a big legacy with a lot of coaches for a long time. So congratulations to him on a long and proud career. But yes, undeniably, GP, it is ending on a dour note.
When we come back, multiple low major programs are reportedly connected to a gambling scandal. Now, what can be done about this issue in the sport? What should be done about this issue in the sport? We'll discuss that next. This is the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. I guess once gambling became as prevalent as it has become in this country, legalized in many places, we were always going to get here. And now here we are. Multiple low major programs are reportedly connected to gambling scandals. North Carolina A&T, Eastern Michigan, Mississippi Valley State. A Temple game last March was flagged for unusual patterns. Norlander, what can be done about this? What should be done about this? I guess you could cross your fingers and hope it'll never materialize, but clearly that's a strategy that did not work.
Yeah, we got the small bells have been dinging on this. There will be an alarm that goes off on this story once we know more. This is Parrish. I think you were on a call with me for the CBS Sports digital side when I alerted some folks that I was hearing about this story back in November, waiting to, uncovering what schools could be involved. We're waiting for the NCAA to actually, disclose what it's found here. I will note, obviously, the NCAA, just as it did with the FBI case back in 2017, it's taking a backseat here. So because the feds are looking into this, the NCAA is going to get the information that is passed along to them as they learn it, and then wait and see what happens there. I've been told these are all low major programs with the exception of Temple, and that dates back to last season. Heiser Miller, who then transferred to Virginia Tech and then subsequently never played for Virginia Tech. The specific allegations and what was or was not done in particular games as betting lines are impacted here, we still don't know. I'm told there's still a few more schools that could be uncovered with allegations against them, and more I'm told maybe an individual player or two. This is also a broader investigation that is tied to Jonte Porter, who's been banned from the NBA. We saw Terry Rozier's name get brought into this, and really Rozier being part of this story late last week was the big news peg with the mid-majors, kind of a subhead to that overall. I'll say that, as it develops, we'll continue to keep you updated on the podcast, cbsports.com. It is truly a scandal, and you want this as you don't want this involved in any sport because it gets into the legitimacy of the competition and all that. But as you well know, Parrish, between computer algorithms and frankly, people that dedicate their lives, watchdogs, to watching betting patterns and picking up on things that are abnormal, and anytime there's even a little bit of a spike here or there, this stuff immediately gets flagged and then gets sussed out. I'm not surprised that we have it. Frankly, this is where we were always going to go. But I can only naively hope that people that are not involved in this, but might be thinking like one day down the road, or if they get presented with a situation and where they're involved in this, you're gonna get caught. You cannot beat the systems in place that are designed to catch this specific activity, because people that choose to bet a certain amount of money to make money because they think they got it, you're going to get caught. Don't be an idiot. Don't break the law. Don't go to jail. Don't do this. Here we are. I hope this is a huge warning sign to scare off anyone in any sport. But again, that's a naive hope, because I think the more betting stuff that is out there, the more likely this is going to happen in sports beyond just college basketball.
Yeah, I don't know that it's 100% rate. If you do something like this, you're going to get caught, but people are getting caught. And that's because any sort of unusual betting activity is going to get flagged. So if I'm working in the NCAA or on a college campus, like the big stuff people talk about, maybe don't have point spreads on low major games or mid-major games. That's just not going to be something that happens. So you got to start the conversation somewhere below that. And I think the best thing is, and maybe this is too simple, but you just have to educate and scare and just say, you could maybe make an extra $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, whatever it is somebody's offering you to manipulate a certain aspect of this basketball game you're about to play in. But there's a chance you will get caught. And if you get caught, you will ruin your life. You will lose your scholarship. You will face criminal charges. And that's the next message that has to be sent on every college campus. And when I talk to college coaches, I can tell you that in addition to talking about NIL every day and taking care of your money every day, they're also really, really emphasizing the gambling aspect of this. Right now, it's the big headline from earlier in the week. It includes names like North Carolina A&T, Eastern Michigan, Mississippi Valley State. If I were a college basketball coach, I'd have those three schools on a piece of paper, and I'd say, let's keep this list this short. Let's make sure we're never a part of that list. You just have to educate and scare. Any other approach is probably an approach that is going to fall a little short of reality. When we come back, one more segment to go. We'll wrap it up by looking ahead to Tuesday night's schedule. We got a triple header on CBS Sports Network. We'll get you ready for tonight's games. We'll do it next. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're here on CBS Sports Network. Real quick, before we get out of here, let's look at Tuesday night's schedule. We got a triple header tonight on CBS Sports Network. 7 Eastern, LaSalle at VCU, followed by St. Bonaventure at Loyola Chicago. After that, Boise State at UNLV. I'll be in studio all night with Brent Stover, Roy Hibbert, John Rothstein. We'll have Inside College Basketball at the end of it. Elsewhere, Marquette at St. John's, Vanderbilt at Florida, Kentucky at Ole Miss, Indiana at Wisconsin, Michigan State at UCLA. Norlander, what are you looking forward to tonight?
I'll give you two more because there's a rank roadkill situation we might be having here, GP. We got top 20 teams on the road. Number 7, Purdue is at Iowa. You mentioned Michigan State. Number 9 is at UCLA. Marquette, number 11 at number 12, St. John's. And then number 20, Arizona is at BYU. BYU, if it were to win that game, I think it would put itself in the NCAA tournament for now if it can get a home win at the Marriott Center. To me, the most compelling matchup of the night, I think you would agree, although if you disagree, I'd love to hear your answer. I'm going to go Marquette against St. John's at the Garden. That's just a great game. St. John's is right now in first place in the Big East because Marquette lost at home to UConn over the weekend. Oh, by the way, St. John's has got to go play at UConn on Friday night. So it's a really big week for the Big East. But this is an awesome Tuesday. These Tuesdays have been incredible. Kentucky's on the road against number 25 Ole Miss. There's one thing after another. Baylor coming off that huge win, plays Texas Tech. These Tuesdays have been so entertaining and so rewarding and giving us so much to talk about on the Wednesday edition of Eye on College Basketball. We'll be loaded up again Wednesday morning. I'm looking forward to a ton, but if you had me give you my most compelling one of the night, I'd go Marquette St. John's number 1, and then frankly, I think I'd go Michigan State UCLA number 2 there. Let's see if MSU can get out of LA with at least one win after dropping on the road against USC over the weekend.
Marquette St. John's should be terrific. Another big basketball night in Midtown Manhattan. Like, I've been here in the city for much of the past month, and just Knicks games are like an event now. St. John's games are an event now. And for the Johnnies to be on the verge of maybe winning a Big East regular season title for the first time since 1992, it is developing into one of the bigger stories in the sport. So that game is going to be happening about 20 blocks to my left down in Midtown Manhattan. And then the game that I'm really interested in tonight, just to see how Kentucky bounces back after that loss over the weekend to John Calipari in Arkansas. Kentucky is actually in my home state, or at least the place where I have a residence. I don't actually go there too often. But Kentucky at Ole Miss, another ranked on ranked matchup. Do you expect, real quick, Mark Pope's team to bounce back? Just real quick on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. Ole Miss is on a big losing streak against ranked opponents there. I'll say Kentucky finds a way to get it done.
Yeah, I compelling matchup. Kentucky at Ole Miss, Marquette at St. John's, and then we got our triple header on CBS Sports Network. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Terry Teagle, legend, Huck and Larnell. Thank you guys for watching the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We'll be back next week. Till then, take care.